Hello everyone, this is Patricia from patriciafenty.com, and today I have a tutorial for this really lovely fall granny square scarf. It's super easy to make because granny squares are super easy. This is my large tog granny square, and I shared that pattern with you a little while ago, so there'll be a link for that in the description box below. I'll have a written pattern there as always. And so yeah, I just used like 4 different color combinations, sewed them all together, and put a really nice little finishing border around it. The border is super simple to make. And you know, when you make granny squares, you have your wrong side, but if you're darning in your tail ends nicely, the wrong side just looks different. And it can still look very, very nice. And then I also made a beanie to go with this using the same colors, and I have this beanie pattern on my YouTube channel already. I will link to that below. And this is, I just, rather than using a continuous yarn, I just changed colors for every round, fastened off and joined on a new color in this sequence. And so it makes a really nice complement to the scarf. So let's get started. Now you're going to need your granny squares, and so of course I'm using the large tog granny square pattern. I'll put a link for that in the description box below. That's below the video. You want to click on the either ... and more, and that'll take you to the description box, and it'll be in the written pattern. Then you can use any granny square pattern you like. This one I'm using 12 squares all together. They are 6 inches across each, so that'll give me a scarf length of 72 inches before I add the border, which will add another couple of inches. And so you can pause the video here and look at the color combination that I'm using. And one of the things I did is I actually made just 4 color combinations, leaving the caramel color for this square out of the outside edge. What that'll do is when I sew these all together, I'm going to use the caramel color as the first round, and that'll set all the squares off really nicely for color. So yeah, and I have them all darned in and I have them blocked. It's really nice to block your squares before you use them. If you want to do the little beanie pattern, again, I will link that in the description box below. That will be in with the pattern instructions. This is the beanie using the number 4 medium weight yarn. In that tutorial, I'm using a number 5 chunky yarn, but I give the instructions on how to use the number 4 yarn as well. And again, you can pause the video to see how I'm using the colors together to create the matching beanie. I'm using a 4mm crochet hook. You can use a 4.5 or 5mm depending on your tension and how you made the squares. You'll need scissors and a darning needle. So let's start sewing these together. And just a little tip on color strategy. When you lay out your squares or when you're choosing colors, the way I'm laying it out is I have a darker color for this square as the outside trim. This one's a lighter color, darker color, and lighter color. So you want to sort of alternate those colors rather than having, you know, dark, dark, light, light together. You see what I mean? So you want to alternate your colors so that you aren't sort of clumping together dark colors and then light colors, if that makes sense to you. Now I'm going to show you how to whip stitch your squares together. You can crochet them together. You can use a different stitch to sew them together. I really like how the whip stitch lays the garment nice and flat. So you want to cut a tail of yarn that's 2 lengths plus about 3/4 of a length of your squares. And put that on, and I like to lay the squares with the color of yarn that I'm working with at the top. And we're going to darn into that piece. So I'm going to darn my tail end in, coming in from the back. And bring that in like that. You want to leave a little bit of a tail to darn in the other direction. So in your corner, you have your 3 chains. 1 chain, let's see here. 1 chain, 2 chain, 3 chain. You're going to skip the first chain, and coming into the second chain or the middle chain of those 3, you're going to bring your needle up through the 1 loop only, the loop closest facing you. Then you're going to pick up this square and you have your 1 chain, 2 chain, 3 chain, and you're going to go down into the middle chain, the second chain of that square, just picking up that top loop only. Then you can pick up this square. You're going to go, you came out of this loop here, you're going to go into this loop here and just picking up the 1 loop only. There you go. And bring your yarn through there. And that's your beginning stitch. Getting it started off properly is important to keep it lined up. You're going to come back down into the next stitch from the front, pick up that top loop, go in here and pick up the top loop from the back, just like that, and pull that through. Kind of snug that up a little bit. And then again, come around, pick up that top loop and that loop. And you're just going to whip stitch this all the way along until you get to the other side, and I will meet you there. And you can pull these a little snug. Once you get going, you can just sort of snug them up like that. So go ahead and whip stitch along there, and I'll see you at that end. Yeah, so 3 times the length for your thread would be better. So I'm going to have just enough here. So coming into your corner, you're coming into your chain space here. So I'm just going to pick up that stitch and that stitch and this one. And now when you come into this one, you're coming into the middle stitch of that chain 3. And you will finish coming down into the middle stitch of this chain 3. And that is perfect. And then you'll just darn your tail in the back there. I don't have much to darn in, but you'll just darn it in the back there. And yeah, make that a little bit longer. Do 3 times the length of that. So you're going to go ahead and just stitch all your squares together in lengthwise. And so here, when I come here, I would choose the tri-color and work this way, and then choose the yellow color here and work this way, and then you'd come back and repeat your pattern like that. So go ahead, stitch all your squares together, and then we'll do the border. Welcome back. So I have all my squares sewn together, and I really do like that whip stitch going into the top loop only, and it creates such a nice little frame around the square, and it's a nice flat join. So everything's all joined together. Now we're going to start crocheting the border around it. So I'll zoom in and get us set up for that. Okay, so starting anywhere on the scarf, I'm going to start with a slip knot, and again, I'm using a color. I'm using the caramel color, which wasn't one of the rounds, the colors in the final rounds of my squares, because I wanted to have something that was a different color from any of the squares. So I kept that caramel out, and that's what I'm going to use. So every stitch, I'll put that on your hook. Every stitch you have, crochet stitch, has a front loop, a back loop, and a back bump. And we are going to be crocheting into the back loop and that back bump, leaving this front bump free. So put your hook in behind, grab your loop from behind, pull it through, flip your tail over, and you'll have 2 loops on your hook and do a single crochet. So we're joining on with a single crochet. By working into the back loop and back bump, we're going to continue with this frame from the granny square and keep that, and it'll look really, really nice. So you're going to chain 1, skip a stitch, go into the next stitch, and that's a chain. The chain will have a back loop and a back bump. There'll be just 3 stitches there. So it'll be a little tricky to pick this up, but there you go. Back loop, back bump, pull that through, do a single crochet. Chain 1, skip a stitch, into the next stitch, back loop, back bump, single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, and here we're working into the seam between the 2. So the stitch you're going to go into is that whip stitch, and just try to grab another stitch from behind like that and do your single crochet. Chain 1, and you'll have to fuss with this a little bit and decide where your skip is going to be. There is a stitch here also. I'm going to go into this stitch here and back loop and back bump. You just want to make sure you have a bit of a space between your stitches in those intersections. Chain 1, skip a stitch, into the next stitch, back loop, back bump. So you're going to do the single crochet, chain, skip a stitch, chain 1, all the way around. When you get to the intersections, sometimes you'll be doing a single crochet into the intersection, sometimes you'll be doing a chain 1 over the intersections. It'll be different all the way around. So continue working around, working into the back loop, back bump, and then I'll show you what to do in the corner when you get to the corner. All right, here we go. So we're coming along the side here. We've come up to a corner. As you come to the corner, depending on how your stitches work out, you may be able to work nicely into the corner, or you may have to add an extra chain. So for me, as I come, I've got my single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch. I'm going into this stitch just before the corner with a single crochet. If I had to go into this stitch here, I would be a little bit far away from the corner. That would be okay. All you need to do is a chain 2 in between. You could even do a chain 1 and skip 2 stitches. Whatever you want to do to get over to that corner. This first round, we're setting up, and once you have the first round set up, then the stitches will all work evenly. But this first round, you have to make some decisions when you're coming into these certain areas of the stitch pattern, whether to do a chain 1 or a chain 2 to get you over into the corner. So I'm comfortable with having the stitch there, a chain 1, and then coming into the corner, you're going to do a single crochet, chain 2, and another single crochet into that chain 3 space, a chain 1, and then you're just going to come out, skip your stitch, go into the next stitch, and carry on with the pattern of a single crochet, chain 1. Skip a stitch, single crochet, chain 1. And you'll see here that that just takes you nicely around the corner. So carry on working this foundation border row all the way around, and then I will see you when you get to the end here and show you a special way to join on here. Now, coming to the end of the first round of the border trim, you will have noticed that as you work around the scarf, your single crochet is going to go either into the last stitch of the cluster and then skip the chain 1 space and go into the next stitch of the next cluster, or it's going to work into the, where is it here? Into the chain 1 space. There we go, into the chain 1 space. So it just sort of depends on how your stitches are working around. So when you come to the end of your round, you want how you come up to your beginning stitch to be the same. So here we were working into the stitch of the chain 1 space. But here I was working into the chain before and after the chain 1 space. So what you can do is at this intersection, just before you come to join in, you can add an extra stitch. And you can see here I added an extra stitch in there just to make sure that when I come around here that I'm going to end so that I have my single crochet, and then there's a stitch there to skip, and then we're going to finish off into the beginning round. So that's how you can just sort of fudge it to get the stitch count right for the end of the round. So once you come to the end of the round, one of the things you want to do is, rather than doing a slip stitch into the last stitch, which will create sort of a bulky knot and make this first stitch look big. We're going to finish with an invisible stitch. So chain 1, and rather than doing the slip stitch, you're just going to cut yourself a tail and then pull that tail through the loop like that, and then put your darning needle on. And so you have your beginning single crochet, there's your knot, there's the top of the single crochet, and this is actually the top of the chain 1. We're going to go into the top of the chain 1, so not the first V stitch, but the second V stitch. Put your needle under both of those loops of that V stitch of the second one, which is actually the chain stitch. And there we go. Bring that through. And what we're creating is like a mock stitch, an invisible stitch. And so this stitch is going to lie kind of on top of this one. So you're going to snug that up, make it look like a stitch. And then the stitch that the yarn is coming out of, there's a V there as well. And you're going to go in between the V. So not this front stitch or the back, right in between the two, into the V, and come out the back. And you're picking up the back of that back bump as well. Pull that through. And you're just going to sort of pull that and lay that down. And then what you want to do is also take this same yarn, go in through this stitch here in the back, like that. And then you're going to go ahead and darn in your tail ends. And then you have a nice invisible stitch there. So now this was the hard round. Now we'll go and do the second round, and it'll be much easier. So darn in your tail ends and we'll come back for the second round. So that's all been darned in nicely and ready for round 2. So that round 1 was the difficult round. It was a bit tricky to crochet into all those stitches in the granny scarf, but from here on in it's going to be super easy. So you're going to create a slip knot, and I'll start close to the corner here, so I'll show you how to go around the corner. And now you can join into any chain 1 space with a single crochet. Bring the yarn through, flip that over, you've got 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. Chain 1, go to your next chain 1 space and do a single crochet. Chain 1, skip a stitch, go to your next chain 1 space and do a single crochet. Chain 1, skip a stitch, next chain 1 space, do a single crochet. Chain 1 and skip a stitch, next chain 1 space, do a single crochet, chain 1. Now we're coming into the corner here, and for every corner you're going to do a single crochet, chain 2, and a single crochet. To get you around the corner, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next chain 1 space, chain 1. So you're going to do that all the way around, doing a single crochet into each chain 1 space, chain 1, skip a stitch, into the next chain 1 space with a single crochet. And then when you get to the corners, you will do a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet in that same space. And that is how the entire border is going to be done. And I'll just show you here, pull back. You can see how nicely that looks, or how nice that looks. Use some proper grammar there. So once you finish this round and you get to this side here, you don't have to worry about counting stitches. It'll all work out. You'll finish off with your single crochet in the chain 1 space, chain 1, and then you'll finish with that invisible stitch as before. Cut your tail, skip this V stitch here, bring your needle and tail in through the chain stitch there, bring it around, lay the stitch on top, make a mock stitch, go back down into the V stitch that the yarn's coming out of, and then darn in your tail ends. So every round will be exactly the same. So you can create as many rounds of this border as you like. You can just stop here if you like. I'm going to carry on. I'm going to add another round in the copper color, the chai, this one, and then the last round I'm going to do in this wine color. I think that would look really nice. So you can use any color combination that you like. You can do as many rounds as you like. You can stop at this if you like. If you like it just with the one round like this, you can do that. You can stop at 2 rounds, 3 rounds, 4 rounds, 5 rounds, whatever you like. Be creative. So I'll come back and I'll show you how it is looking with my final round. Welcome back. So here I am, I'm all done, and I decided just to do the 3 rounds of accent colors. So the caramel, the spring green, and the chai. I found that the burgundy was just a little bit too much. So I think that looks so great. And again, the inside, you know, if you do finish it off nicely with your darning in your tail ends, it looks different, but it still looks really, really nice. And of course, the little beanie to go with it. So just such a super, super fun pattern. And I love working with granny squares. They're just so much fun. They're kind of therapeutic in a way. And yeah, so anyways, there it is. Beautiful fall colors. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel. We'll see you next time.